أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون. وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين. واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون. قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون. قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين. قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم. قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم ألا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد أضل منكم جبلا كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لطمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخناهم على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكسه في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
Salawat. I'll just repeat that announcement. Can you kindly recite Surah Fatiha for Marhooma Nasreen Fatima, daughter of Wazir Ali, and all the Marhoomeens of Mamdani family. In addition, can you also recite for Marhoom Murtaza Laka and Marhooma Khairun-Nisa Ismail. Fatiha.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. کہاں جائے آخر بیابان ہر سو، شکستہ ہے پہلو اکیلی ہے زہرا، رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ در فاطمہ کو جلایا ہے تم نے، کیا وعدہ اپنا بھلایا ہے تم نے۔ در فاطمہ کو جلایا ہے تم نے، کیا وعدہ اپنا بھلایا ہے تم نے۔ تماچے نہ مارو مسلمانوں، جاؤ علی کو بلاؤ، اکیلی ہے زہرا، رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ بیاں کس سے جا کر کروں درد اپنا، ہے غیروں کی دنیا نہیں کوئی اپنا۔ بیاں کس سے جا کر کروں درد اپنا، ہے غیروں کی دنیا نہیں کوئی اپنا۔ کوئی جا کے بابا سے کہہ دو یہ جا کر، کہ لے جاؤ آ کر، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ اے لخت جگر اے حسن ابن حیدر، یہ نانا کے پہلو میں سونے نہ دے گر۔ اے لخت جگر اے حسن ابن حیدر، یہ نانا کے پہلو میں سونے نہ دے گر۔ تم آ جانا پہلو میں سو جانا ماں کے بقی میں، یہاں پر اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ شہ کربلا نے کہا رو کے ماں سے، یہ مظلوم بیٹے نے مظلوم ماں سے۔ شہ کربلا نے کہا رو کے ماں سے، یہ مظلوم بیٹے نے مظلوم ماں سے۔ اکیلا ہوں میں بھی اکیلی ہے زینب، اکیلے ہیں بابا اکیلی ہے زہرا، رونے پہ پہرا مصائب کا صحرا، اکیلی ہے زہرا۔ صلوات۔
بر محمد و آل محمد صلوات۔ ذکر غم حسین سے محفل سجی رہی، گل ہو گیا چراغ مگر روشنی رہی، ذکر غم حسین سے اکبر کے بعد زیست میں کیا دل کشی رہی، اکبر کے بعد زیست میں کیا دل کشی رہی، لیلا تمام عمر یہی سوچتی رہیں، لیلا تمام عمر عباس لینے آئے جو میدان کی رضا، عباس لینے آئے جو میدان کی رضا، زینب بس اپنے بازوں کو دیکھتی رہیں، زینب بس اپنے بازوں اشک غم حسین کا ٹوٹا نہ سلسلہ، اشک غم حسین کا ٹوٹا نہ سلسلہ، رومال فاطمہ میں ہمیشہ نمی رہی، رومال فاطمہ میں ہمیشہ نمی رہی، رومال فاطمہ میں پر محمد و آل محمد صلوات اللہم صلی علی محمد
آواز بلند صلوات. Just few verses for baby Fatima. صلوات بھیجیں محمد والے. ہر لفظ جو اترا ہے وہ خود بول رہا ہے. ہر لفظ جو اترا ہے وہ خود بول رہا ہے. قرآن مبین فاطمہ زہرا کی ثنا ہے. قرآن مبین فاطمہ زہرا کی ثنا ہے. ہر لفظ جو اترا ہے کوثر سے سنو آئے تطہیر سے پوچھو. کوثر سے سنو آئے تطہیر سے پوچھو. سرمایہ انور ہے کہنے کو ردا ہے. سرمایہ انور ہے کہنے کو ردا ہے. ہر لفظ جو اترا ہے آغاز سے تا حشر سرے بزم امامت. آغاز سے تا حشر سرے بزم امامت. روشن جو دیا ہے وہ انہی کا تو دیا ہے. روشن جو دیا ہے وہ انہی کا تو دیا ہے. ہر لفظ جو اترا ہے وہ خود بول رہا ہے. قرآن مبین فاطمہ زہرا کی ثنا ہے. صلوات.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد شكرا ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. Salawat, please. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brothers and sisters. It's nice to, of course, see you all after some time. I think last time I came was pre-COVID. And just want to begin with that, of course, I was following Leeds Jamaat and messages of Marhoomin, people that, of course, you know better than me, but people who I'd met long time ago, but previously when I came. So please, can recite Surah Al-Fatiha for all of the Marhoomin who passed away during that time in this Jamaat, inshallah, please. And just specifically, just as a kind request for Surah Al-Fatiha for the following people, please. Marhooma Nasreen by Fatima, daughter of Wazir Ali and all Marhoomin of Mamdani family. Marhoom Murtaza by Laka. Marhooma Khairun Nisa by Ismail. Surah Al-Fatiha, please. Sorry. And if we can just begin the majlis with a 5 times Yujibul Shifa for Razi Rizvi, please. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibul murtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. Amma yujibul murtarra idha da'ahu wa yakshifu su. أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء أما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء اللهم صل على صدق الله. It's an honor to recite this majlis for Lady Fatima salamullahi alayha. And the topic I've chosen for this 2-part lecture is the creation of men and women in the Quran, and specifically whether or not the Islamic tradition looks at women generally and women in history as inferior in some manner, whether it is due to their intellect, their aql, whether it is due to their iman, for their faith, for example, or their societal capability, their social roles in society. So it's an important topic because in the last few weeks, I mean every week, by grace of Allah, we do a tafsir session on Zoom. So I'm always looking at surahs and different interpretations of verses. And throughout my research, I came across a number of narrations, but of course, interpretation of verses, which you may all know as well, which specifically talk about the women's intellect as lacking in some way, as deficient in some way, as well as their faith deficient in some way. Yet even though, of course, we praise and do salawat of respected figures like Lady Fatima, Lady Khadija, Lady Maryam, peace be upon them all. So the fundamental question is, why do these narrations exist? And if they do, and if they are authentic, why are they there? And what have our respected scholars said about them? And I say this from my heart because I chose this topic because I was looking at the khutbah fadak of Lady Fatima salamullahi alayha, salawat please. And what inspired me to do these lectures, to be very honest, were her words. I thought, what should I speak about for 2 lectures? It was her words in the khutbah that I felt inspired by because of the very intelligent and reflective way she speaks about Islam. And I actually want to compare her words to Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. Now this is not a competition between husband and wife, although that competition always goes on in my household, I don't know, well, competitions in various things. But between them, I think it's important to ask this question, which I asked when I was a youngster, which is, what was the mind of Lady Fatima like, actually? I mean, what was the relationship between Imam Ali and Lady Fatima? I mean, all I used to hear when I was young, maybe this is still the same today, is Lady Fatima is very pious, a good mother, supportive wife of Imam Ali. There were dispute about land of Fadak and denial of her right, and she was madloom. So it's very much about her general piety and spirituality. But then when we talk about As-Sadiq alayhi salam, we can talk about the number of students that he had, which you can find in Kitab-ul-Irshad by Sheikh Mufid, that over 4,000 students plus, for example, and that some of his students were skilled in science as well and in understanding the universe as well as fiqh and other things. So the question is, why do we, if you agree with me, you might disagree with me, why do we paint these respected figures in Islamic history in a very general way? Is there a reason for that? Is it because we've just put them aside in some way and they are only good for their piety and general spirituality and motherhood and not anything else? Or is it because we have missed something? Or is it because actually the interpretation over centuries has been male dominated? So if you are looking at Quran and Islam through the lens of men, naturally you will not look at contribution of women. It's a natural thing. This is not unique, of course, to Islam. It's there within human history generally. So this is not a topic to target Islamic tradition, but to understand why this interpretation may have existed. Salawat, please. So let me start with the words of the great lady. This is a few lines from the khutbah fadak, which we know was delivered in response or in front of Abu Bakr as a claim for her right of fadak, but also to show her knowledge in Islam and her status as the daughter of Rasulullah. So it's a broader context than just fadak, because there is no reason, no need for her to mention the things that I'm about to say, because it is very broad. I mean, she could just have focused on this issue of fadak, but she broadens her knowledge and reach to aspects of Islam, of Quran, and her status. So just a few lines, because it's a long khutbah. This is how she talks about salah. She says that وَالصَّلَاةَ تَنْزِيحَةً لَكُمْ عَنِ الْكِبْرِ. So here she's talking about why certain aspects of Islam exist. And she says salah or prayer exists as a purification or as a removal for all of you from kibr, arrogance or pride. Her understanding of salah and why we pray salah is to remove arrogance from ourselves. Look how concise and beautiful it is. So we're not praying because Allah has told us, because our parents has told us, because we have to do it, but it's to remove something deep inside of us. And when we know that that arrogance has been removed, my sins, my mistakes, then my prayer is accepted. My prayer has value. And why should prayer have that value? Because if I'm praying to Allah, a being beyond or transcendent beyond all creation, and He has created me, I have to be humble. And if I'm humble to Allah, I have to be humble to the creation. Because if Allah is merciful and has commanded me to respect the rights of people, and I disrespect you in some way, I've angered Allah. But if I'm arrogant and I don't think too much about my sins and I just have to pray and I want to get it done and all that, there is no value of salah really. And there is no enduring relationship with Allah or the creation. Now, let's look at what Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam said. Now, it's in fact very similar. This is in Sermon 110. The context is different. Imam Ali at that time is a Khalif. And he is of course an Imam according to the Shia, but he is a Khalifa for all Muslims. And this khutbah of course is delivered for the general public. So he's got a position as a leader. But look at what he says. He says that وَإِقَامُ الصَّلَاةِ فَإِنَّهَا الْمِلَّةِ. He says rising or standing for prayer, it is because it is millah. Millah means religious community. So his understanding of salah, salawat please. His understanding of salah is it's for the religious community. So it means prayer is something that gives a godly identity and practice to a community, that you can say that this community is a community of prayer, a community of God. Now that is not to say, oh, Lady Fatima's understanding of salah was deeper than Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. It's perhaps more logical to say that the context was different. He's a Khalif, he's a leader, he's trying to run a society. So his context of salah is to make the community a godly community and society. But you can see the difference. Now, at this point, do we teach our children the meaning of Islam from Lady Fatima? I can tell you I never learned that. In my, I'm 39, so maybe in the last 7, 10 years, I'm reading more khutbah and obviously more in the Islamic tradition. In my teenage years, 20s, I didn't understand anything about Lady Fatima's understanding of Islam. But if I had understood it, I would say, perhaps, knowing myself, that I think my prayer would have been more valuable in my teenage years, in my 20s. If Islam was taught to me like that, I think I would have had a better relationship with salah in my teenage years, in my 20s. That means, yes, I prayed, but to find meaning in the prayer. That's something which maybe we are all searching for. Look at the second thing that she says. She says that, وَالزَّكَاةَ تَزْكِيَةً لِلنَّفْسِ وَنَمَاءً فِي الرِّزْقِ. She says that zakat is a purification for the soul and as a means of growth for rizq. So by giving charity, you're purifying the soul because you're being generous, you're thinking beyond yourself, it's a purification for your sins, and of course there is this mystical causality, or this way that if we give more, Allah gives us more and multiplies, as it says in the Quran, multiplies that grain several times in Surah Al-Baqarah. So she's now talking about the personal impact and the general impact of zakat as also rizq. What does Imam Ali say? Imam Ali says, وَإِيتَاءُ الزَّكَاةِ فَإِنَّهَا فَرِيدَةٌ وَاجِبَةٌ. Giving zakat is a compulsory obligation, which is probably what we were taught in madrasa and with khums as well. You see the difference here. So because of a male-dominated interpretation of Islam, which is fine, of course, history has developed like that. But it doesn't mean to say that just if we have the tools now to re-examine this, it doesn't mean that we should still be ignoring Lady Fatima's valuable understanding of Islam, because just with two sentences, inshallah, we have opened up our mind just to salah and zakah. Salawat, please. So, the next question, which is, I think, a bigger question is, if you agree with me, Lady Fatima has something more to offer than just her being a mother and just her being this pious lady, and she had a mind, right? Then we come to the second question is, well, why didn't the Islamic tradition bring these aspects out of Lady Fatima? Or for example, the entrepreneurial or business mind of Lady Khadija salamullahi alayha. I mean, we may say these things, but we never delve into it. We don't understand, well, how did she, for example, actually coordinate her business skills and charity? I mean, that's a business question, but we don't generally go into it, right? Well, in my humble research the last week or so that I've been doing this, I want to give you where this interpretation has come from, where perhaps we may not have valued the respected women maybe as much as we should have. Now, in the Quran, for example, in Surah An-Nisa, verse 34, you've all heard this verse, but I'll just give you a sample of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَالرِّجَالُ قَوَّامُونَ عَلَى النِّسَاءِ بِمَا فَضَّلَ اللَّهُ بَعْضَهُمْ عَلَى بَعْضٍ وَبِمَا أَنْفَقُوا مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ. Men are the managers or maintainers of women because of the advantage that Allah has granted some of them over others, and by virtue of them spending out of their wealth, right? So you have a verse in the Quran which talks about the qawwamun or rijal qawwamun ala nisa, men as being maintainers, managers over women because they have an advantage that some have over some, and also that they have the obligation of nafaqah. Nafaqah means, as husbands know, that when you get married, you have an obligation to support your wife and the family, right? But there are two things here. One is the verse was revealed in a context in which men were the breadwinners in a Meccan and Medinan society. Lady Khadija salamullahi alayha was an exception to that rule, but predominantly men were the workers and the maintainers, and it was their obligation to provide the nafaqah naturally. Even if you go, for example, in fiqh books like Lumma Dimishqiya, a very famous book by Sayyida Thani, you will see that there is even specific ahadith that we have about what should be spent on in the summer and the winter. So for example, because it is colder, a woman deserves 2 sort of mains of coat or 2 pieces of clothing to keep her warm, as opposed to the summer, or oil, for example, given for cooking, etc. You'll find this in hadith. Now, I'm not there to go into the different interpretations of this verse, but a predominant interpretation is that men are the maintainers of women by virtue of their natural superior attributes in intellect and economic power. Okay? And I've given the second reason, which is in the verse itself, by the fact that they give nafaqah. Now, of course, women who I'm not seeing, but maybe I don't know what they're thinking or not, whether they have, some men, by the way, might target me because I'm discussing this. I did a test run in a family gathering of a Christmas dinner. So some of my uncles said, you're putting us in a bit of a predicament. I'm putting myself in a predicament as well. But anyway, I want to be objective and honest. This is, of course, Lady Fatima. So women, our respected women, might say that women also earn, right? Do they also have obligation of nafaqah today? I'm talking about 21st century. Do you see that? So I'm not providing an answer, and that means going into the fiqhi interpretations of our respected ulama. That requires a series of lectures. But I'm just trying to give you that very objective, honest context that these are natural questions which women have today because the society has changed. But what has happened is a particular interpretation of this verse has continued till 21st century, and therefore has given us a lens that intellectual and economic attributes only apply to men. Salawat, please. Okay, I'll give you a second example, and maybe you have heard this as well. In Nahju Balagha, in Sermon 80, which is a sermon which a number of scholars have said has the context to do with the Battle of Siffin and Aisha, where because Aisha had challenged Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Ali ibn Abi Talib responded with this khutbah talking about the attributes of women. Okay? And I'll just give you the first line. Ali ibn Abi Talib has said, Ma'ashir al-nas, inna nisaa nawaqisul iman wa nawaqisul hudud wa nawaqisul uqul. okay, that indeed women are deficient in their faith, deficient in the shares of inheritance, and deficient in their intellect, right? Now, there is discussion about this khutbah, whether it is authentic or not. If it is authentic, it is directed to Aisha, or 3, that he's talking about all women. That is also a possibility. Or this has got nothing to do with Ali ibn Talib Islam. Again, I'm just being very objective with you. If Muslim or non-Muslim, our respected women or men, if you just go on Google, you will find all of these things. So I'm not quoting to you anything that is controversial, or you just search it and you'll find these things. So if a non-Muslim, or let's give the context of Western media, yes, based on my research, generally it is an Islamophobic media, and you look at a number of reports by Islamic Human Rights Commission which prove that, there are certain things which they say which we do have to reflect on. When they talk about the lower status of women, it's not just ISIS that is doing that. It's not just extreme interpretations of Islam that is subjugating women. We have these things in our tradition. So obviously, if we have these things in our tradition, what is our position on it? That's the fundamental question. Another example by Ali ibn Talib Islam, you'll find this ahadith at the end of Nahjul Balagha. These are his aqwal or statements. He says, for example, that al-marratu aqrab, women are scorpions, okay? Or he says, al-marratu shar, women are evil. You'll find all of these things, okay? You just have to go on alislam.org. You can go on your phone, and then in fact, I'll give you saying number 238 and saying number 61, if you don't believe me, okay? So you'll find all of these things are there. Now, again, the second question is, well, these statements come without isnad, without a chain. Are they authentic or not? But we still respect Nahjul Balagha, so obviously we still have to value the book. So what we are finding is, from Quran and also from Imams, we have certain narrations which talk about women. Salawat, please. Now, before going to the next bit, let me give you a statement of Shaheed Murtada Mutahari. I'm sure you have all heard of him. He was assassinated. His qabr is in the Dari of Fatima al-Ma'asuma, Salman alayha. May Allah give us strength and risk to go for ziyarat, inshallah. This is a statement of his. Again, I'm not criticizing Quran or Imams. I'm giving you what's there. And with our respected ulama, this was the context in which they say it. So I'll give a, 18 warning or 15 warning, PG warning to the women, because they might get angry in listening. So, but these are not my words, so please don't blame me. My wife is there, my daughter is there, so I'm giving all disclaimer, which I think husbands generally do when they broach a subject. You give like 10 disclaimers before you start talking, so you shield yourself, right? So I'm doing the same thing. Okay, so this is Shaheed Mutahari's words. He says, the feelings of a woman are aroused quicker than a man's. Her sentiments are excited sooner than those of a man. That is, a woman, in matters with which she is involved or of which she is afraid, reacts sooner and with more acuteness just as she feels, while a man is more cool-headed. Okay? In activities based on reasoning and in abstruse intellectual problems, a woman cannot equal a man. That's why I did the disclaimer, ladies. But in literature, painting and all matters that are related to aesthetics, she is not behind man. Man has more ability to keep a secret than a woman, and he keeps unpleasant private matters to himself better than a woman. Woman is more soft-hearted and instantly resorts to weeping and occasionally to fainting. Now, you will find these statements there by our respected Shia scholars and Sunni scholars. I make no distinction between Shia and Sunnis, they are the same. Whether you talk about Shaheed Mutahari, Marhooma Nasreen Fatima, you will find a number of these statements there. Okay? Now, I'm not there to devalue motherhood or say that a woman and man, each one has to earn more than the other, or they're in competition with each other. No. each gender has its beautiful role which has to be respected. What I want to analyze is, in their essence, is it true that a woman's intellect is less, that she can't solve difficult theoretical problems? Is that true? Is it true that a man is more cool-headed than a woman? Now, if you look at history, who were all the world wars started by? Men. Does that mean we were led by our emotions? Two, if you go on YouTube, I mean, this is what I found, every other day you have a quantum mechanics or quantum physics sort of video or something about science. A number of the speakers are women. I mean, they're quantum physicists at the highest positions, right? So you begin to think, a young person begins to think, well, that's why I'm saying that, you know, when sometimes we ask, why do young people sometimes not attend majlis? Or let's say, maybe not take interest in reading about Islam, or they want to go on social media. Is it because what they see on social media is more intellectually appealing to them? And then what they hear, perhaps from majalis, or maybe what they read, it's contradictory? So it's a fundamental problem. I'm saying this also as a father with 2 children, that, yeah, I have to teach my children, and I want to teach them honestly. Well, why are you, I told them in the car, this is the truth. I said, do you know why we're going to Leeds? So they said, oh, can we go and see some nice countryside and valleys? I said, inshallah, we can do that if weather permitting. But I said, this is not the main reason for why we're going to Leeds. I said, we're going to Leeds for majalis of Bibi Fatima. Do you know who Bibi Fatima is? So I explained to them, right? And of course, I wanted to bring out these intellectual attributes. I don't want Bibi Fatima just to be something, oh, he's just another majlis and some pious figure, and they can't make a distinction with Lady Fatima, Ali, Imam Hassan. They can't make a distinction in their minds. Because when they go to school, they can make a distinction between Shakespeare and Wilfred Owen and Siegfried Sassoon and all the World War II points. They can make a distinction as to who these personalities are. So that's why I bring the point of social media, which is what young people see as contributors in societies is also women. You see it on social media. You see it in the classroom. You see a female teacher. You see it in university. So these statements, when Shahid Mutahari says feelings of women are aroused quicker, okay, maybe some things are true, but maybe some things are false. Maybe some things about intellect might be false. Let's examine it. Salawat, please. Shall I go on for 20, because it's 20 minutes, because you put no height 7:40. So 20 minutes? Yeah? Okay. I don't want people to be tired. Oh. Okay, this is quote Rasul by his words, and so the women also, the topic you have picked is interesting, so I'm going by consensus, inshallah. Hopefully women agree as well, inshallah, okay? Right. So, I'm going to give you one example from Quran as to how opinions may have changed over time, and you can see why our respected scholars perhaps chose this view about women, like Shahid Mutahari's words. And I also want to try to give you a solution, but I don't know if we'll have time to that, and that's for part 2 tomorrow at Ahlul Bayt Cultural Center, because the solution is from a contemporary scholar, Sayyid Kamal Haydari. Sayyid Kamal Haydari, for those of you who don't know, is a mujtahid, is a marja, and he gives lectures in Arabic and Farsi on YouTube. You can find it. And he's given maybe 15 durus or sessions on this as well, okay? So let's take this verse as an example. This is from Surah An-Nisa, verse 1. You might ask, well, what does the Quran say about this? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ya ayyuhan nasu attaqu rabbakum alladhi khalaqakum min nafsin wahida. O mankind, be wary or conscious of your Lord who created you from a single soul. وَخَلَقَ مِنْهَا زَوْجَهَا وَبَثَّ مِنْهُمَا رِجَالًا كَثِيرًا وَالنِّسَاءَ, and created its mate from it, and from the two of them scattered numerous men and women. Then Allah says, وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ الَّذِي تَسَاءَلُونَ بِهِ وَالْأَرْحَامِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَلَيْكُمْ رَقِيبًا. Be wary of Allah, in whose name you adjure one another and the wombs. Indeed, Allah is watchful over you. What does the Quran say about this? Quran says, to Ya ayyuhan nas, okay? It's not addressed to the believers, not to the mu'minun, it's addressed to all of human beings. So this verse is to do with all human beings. O mankind, He has created you from one soul, and then from that created its mate and scattered men and women. Be wary of your Lord. So first of all, look at what Allah is saying. Allah is saying men and women come from one single source, one single substance. Out of that, men and women come. Now already, even before going to the tafasir, you can see the difference in the verses of Quran and the hadith I also laid out to you, yes? You see the difference in language, which is why I always say we must read Quran more to direct us in our understanding. Because whenever you hear a hadith from the mimbar, you can never be sure it's authentic. Never. You'll always, even if a hadith that is sahih, there still might be a 10% doubt that it is not authentic. With the exception of mutawatir hadith, like Ghadir Qum, narrated a lot of times in one generation and successive generations. That is why we should go by Quran first. So you might say, well, oh, we have the answer from Quran. I humbly believe we do. But then how come our scholars still had this understanding? This is the reason why. In Majmul Bayan by Allama Tabarsi, rahmatullahi alayh, Majmul Bayan is a 12th century tafsir by Allama Tabarsi. Those of you that have visited Mashhad to do ziyarat of Imam Rada, his qabr is at the back of the haram. I don't know if you have visited or not. Of course, we usually spend time with the Imam, but if you go at the back of the haram, his qabr is there, okay? So he's buried in Mashhad, right? And his tafsir spans about 30 volumes, very famous Shia tafsir. He says in the interpretation of this verse, he says, ذهب أكثر المفسرين إلى أنها خلقت من أضلاع آدم. He says most of the mufassirun, most of the interpreters of Quran say that she, the woman, was created from the rib of Adam, or from the ribs of Adam. We have this narration in our tafsir. Now, you might find that similar to the Christian tradition. Eve was created from the rib of Adam. We also believe that in our narration. We believe that Hawa was created from the rib of Adam, or according to other traditions, Hawa was created when Adam was lying down and she was taken from the lowest, the asfal, from the lowest of the ribs of Adam. So we have this hadith, by the way, quoted from 10th century in Tafsir al-Qummi, 12th century, and even up to 18th century in Tafsir al-Safi by Allama Faid al-Kashani. So for 8 centuries, this narration has remained in our Islamic tradition, and none of the scholars rejected it. You see that? I'm quoting you directly from the text, which I have in front of me. Okay? So one of the reasons why we have this view that women is inferior in intellect or in their substance is because despite the verse of the Quran, they use narrations to show that this substance, this single substance where women came from was actually the rib of Adam. Now if you think about it, it does make sense according to this narrative that if Adam alayhi salam is the first creation of Allah, you can then piece together a narrative where Hawa is second coming from Adam. Do you see that? That is not to say it's correct. I'm just telling you that is what we have, right? So if the woman is from the lowest kind of ribs of Adam, already in your mind you think the woman is a bit lower. Let me give you a second example, but something very different. In Mizan fi Tafsir al-Quran, which you are all aware of, Tafsir al-Mizan by Allama Tabatabai, rahmatullahi alayh, Allama Tabatabai, 20th century scholar, and in his tafsir, which goes by interpreting the Quran with other verses of the Quran, as well as using philosophy and irfan, this is what he says. Look at the difference in his language. Salawat, please. he says that this verse relates to the following: وَهُمْ نَاسٌ مُتَّحِدُونَ فِي الْحَقِيقَةِ الْإِنسَانِيَةِ مِنْ غَيْرِ اِخْتِلَافٍ فِيهَا بَيْنَ الرَّجُلِ مِنْهُمْ وَالْمَرَّةِ. He says this verse relates to human beings who are godly in the worship of Allah with the reality of humanness without any difference between men and women. So a muwahid, somebody that worships Allah, can be a man and a woman without any distinction between them. And second, that when Allah talks about nafsin wahida, He says this is aynu shay. Aynu shay means the reality of a thing. So He says that if we look at the Quran, Allah is pointing to the fact that in their essence, if we are talking about nafs, He says nafs means nafsul insaniya, the soul of humanness. When Allah creates a man and a woman, He creates them from one single soul, not with two souls, two different souls, one soul. This soul, what He terms as the human soul, humanness, the human substance. In that human substance is a reality. It is from that reality which men and women emerge without any distinction. He says there is no distinction in the ruh or the nafs or the material, the madda of the man and the woman at all. There isn't, according to him. And he proves this using other verses of Quran, which I don't want to say because it will just take long. Surah Al-A'raf, Surah Al-Hujurat, they all use this language of nafsun wahida or dhakara wa untha, talking about the sameness of a man and a woman. Then, this is the most interesting part. He says the narrations to do with the woman coming from the rib of Adam, he says, La dalil alayh. He says there is no evidence for it. According to him, there is no evidence for these narrations. Now this is 20th century, because he passed away, I don't know the exact, is it 1970s, 80s? Somebody can correct me, but I think 70s, 80s, if anybody knows. He passed away 70s or 80s, Allama Tabatabai. So if I'm close, 82, okay, thank you. 1982 he passed away. So this is a very recent tafsir. So again, my question is, why aren't scholars today, or why aren't we as a community, or we look at our madrasa syllabus, our narrations, why aren't we going by the tafsir of Allama Tabatabai, which is providing a different viewpoint, and I would say a more Quranic viewpoint of the creation of men and women? So the answer as to why we have had this viewpoint is very simple. If you go by a particular hadith, your whole interpretation and view of Quran, Islam and women will be skewed by that narration. Because you might ask, well, why aren't we going by other verses of Quran? Why aren't we going by a hadith from As-Sadiq alayhi salam, where it clearly says that men are and women are created from teen, from clay? So why didn't that narration become prominent? Do you see that? So now, if you go by this understanding, it means even in terms of our ahkam, I gave the example of nafaka earlier on, we will always think that nafaka is only the responsibility of a man. Because if we go by this narration only, you will always associate nafaka with the man. But if we had gone by other interpretations, we might have an interpretation that nafaka is also responsibility of a woman to also maintain and provide and contribute in the household. I'll give you my own example. When I was doing my PhD, right, I was mainly studying and working part-time. So my dear wife was working full-time and earning more than me and helping with expenses. You see that? So what happens there? Does that mean that she had the responsibility of nafaka and I committed a sin? Or that she got lots of thawab, mashallah, or she did a mustahab act, which some scholars say she did a mustahab act, and I did not completely fulfill my responsibility nafaka, or that I was fulfilling a greater responsibility by studying and she supported me. How do you look at that? Do you see that? So what I'm trying to say that it's not as clear-cut as associating an economic circumstance or reality in Meccan and Medina society with the 21st century, where we perhaps need to relook at Quran. If we believe that Quran is a universal book until Day of Judgment. Because if we believe that it is not, or we believe that this interpretation only remains of the inferiority of a woman, then essentially there's no need to understand Quran anymore. But if we believe it's universal, it means the Quran can apply to all times, inshallah. Salawat, please. Let me give you this example to end with before the Maqtal. I posed the question of going into the mind, right, of Lady Fatima or Lady Khadija. If you to look at Lady Fatima, who was she raised by? Lady Khadija, salamun alayha. I said that Lady Khadija was a businesswoman. She inherited caravans from her father. Now those caravans and the trade which she inherited made her wealthy. But it's one thing to be wealthy, and it's another thing to know what to do with wealth. Okay? Any businessman would know that, right? So what do our earliest sources say about how Lady Khadija's mind was and how she acted with her wealth? Look at how she's described in Siratun Nabawiyya by Ibn Hisham. This is one of our earliest historical sources. Look how he describes Lady Khadija. He says, now Khadija was a determined, noble and intelligent woman, possessing the properties with which God willed to honor her. So when Maysara told her these things, she sent to the apostle of God, and so the story goes and says, O son of my uncle, I like you because of our relationship. So this is Khadija proposing to Rasulullah. O son of my uncle, I like you because of our relationship. So they had a communication, right? And your high reputation among your people, your trustworthiness, good character and truthfulness. Then she proposed marriage. Now Khadija at that time was the best born in Quraysh, of the greatest dignity too, and the richest. And all her people were eager to get possession of her wealth if it were possible. So in our earliest historical sources, Khadija is described as intelligent, as a business owner, as possessing dignity, as being quite a determined and forthright lady, right? Any of you have bosses as female bosses? No? I've had good and bad experiences. Anyway, I think Lady Khadija was a good boss, it looked like. But I've had a bad experience in a law firm, but a good experience at Anglia-Ruskin University. So, but that's not unique to women. Men can be bad bosses as well. But she, if you look at this, she was very, very forthright. And something I would also like to do more research on, which I haven't at the time, is, what was the communication like between our beloved Prophet and Lady Khadija before marriage? How did they meet? What did they talk about? A romantic connection? How did they like each other? That's important for ourselves and people wanting to get married, right? I mean, you want to get married in the right way. You want to understand what type of woman you should go for, or what type of man you should go for, right? Now, sometimes asking these questions, people find it a bit offensive, or how can you go into these personal elements of their lives? But what's the point of having these respected figures as our role models if we can't learn from them? The alternative is just going on YouTube and social media and looking at the next celebrity. I mean, and that's the reality of life. Every other day I see a motivation video from Arnold Schwarzenegger or Jordan Peterson or someone. Every day there's some guru coming on, right? And that's what young people would watch. That's the reality of it. But if we're able to tap into these things, we can understand these personalities better. So to conclude, I would like to say that the reason why we may have looked at Lady Fatima and our respected women, perhaps in a lower way, is because of selecting a particular narration and then looking at the Quran that way. And then it has resulted in a number of knock-on effects about how we look at their attributes and their status. Now, in part 2 tomorrow, inshallah, I will go into the spiritual and moral attributes of women, and then inshallah provide a solution. Salawat, please. Can we dim the lights for Sorry. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله. السلام عليك يا سيدة نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا زوجتي ولي الله. السلام عليك يا أيها المحدثة العليمة. This is the ziyarah that we recite, or parts of the ziyarah if we're able to visit Al-Baqi, and generally in remembrance of Al-Fatima. We say, peace be upon you, O daughter of the Messenger of Allah. Peace be upon you, O leader or master of the women of all the worlds. We say, peace be upon you, O the wife of the successor of Allah. And peace be upon you, O the one who conversed with Allah, O intelligent woman. Even our own ziyarah demonstrates the value of this lady. Her piety, her status as the daughter of Rasulullah, her status in front of women generally, her intellect and spiritual capability. But you tell me, my dear brothers and sisters, how much do we appreciate of our mother, Lady Fatima? In her life, when Rasulullah used to get injured, whether if people used to throw rocks on him, or if he was in the battlefield and came back, who was there to nurse his wounds? It was none other than who we say Ummul Abiha, the mother of her father. How many, to whom was she the mother to? To Rasulullah, to Hassan and Hussein, to Ali, to us today? What was her capability? When Lady Fatima used to pray and go to sajda, her sons Hassan and Hussein used to hear her mother pray. They used to say, our dear mother, we hear that you are praying for everyone, the community, the orphans, the people, the gharib, the fuqara. Oh mother, why do you not pray for us? And Lady Fatima used to say, my beloved children, remember, if you pray for other people first, then yourself, your dua will be accepted. Look at the beautiful heart of this woman, that she had the community in her mind. But how was she treated, especially towards the end of her life? Reports indicate that our beloved mother passed away 75 to 95 days after the death of Rasulullah. When Rasulullah was lying on his deathbed, he brought each of his family member closer. Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, Hassan and Hussein alayhi salam, and Fatima. When he brought Fatima salamullah alayha closer, what did Fatima do? What would a daughter do? Those of us who are fathers, a daughter always loves to sleep or go to the father's chest, even the grandfather's chest. She went onto her father's chest, crying and sobbing, knowing that this was the last time that she would be able to rest her head on her father's chest. Rasulullah put his hand over Fatima's head. She said, my dear daughter, I know that you are crying. I know that you will miss me, but please know that you will soon die after me. Fatima said, but when, my father, I want to meet you. If she wants to meet her father, how much love was between Fatima salamullahi alayha and Rasulullah? To the fact that Rasulullah would stand up for Fatima when Fatima entered her house. But why? Going back to the lecture, because of Fatima's manners, because of her character, because of her traits. My brothers and sisters, how many centuries, How much time have we lost with our mother by not tapping into her ilm and her character? This is why I am sad today. Not because of anything else. Struggles come and go, but our legacy is our mother. And finally, reports indicate that when, towards the end of her life, there was the dispute of Fadak, there was the dispute of the Khilafah of Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, that others arguably denied the legitimacy of Ali alayhi salam, Fatima felt the most heaviest. This is when that burden of the world was on her shoulders. She saw her father die. She saw her father disrespected towards the end of his life. And now she sees the same thing with Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam. How much does she bear? To the extent that she tells her husband, "Oh Ali, I love you so, but I am angry with those people who have disrespected my father and you. Please bury me at the middle of the night when a lot of people don't know." Now you tell me, my brothers and sisters, for a woman that had love for the whole community in her life, for her to say that, how angry she was at those that did not respect the teachings of the Quran and the Prophet and the Imam. Such was the death of Fatima salamullahi alayha. Oh Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you on these nights to elevate and bless Lady Fatima. Make her the mother of our children. Make her our mother that we can learn from her. And we want to say to you, oh Allah, for you are all knowledgeable, that you know that we respect your great lady, and we are here as men and women to follow in her beautiful footsteps. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. O Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we ask you to please forgive our sins. O Allah, please forgive the sins of all the beloved marhoomin of this community center, especially those in whose majlis this honor is of, and all of our marhoomin. O Allah, please give us strength to all our families to follow the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, that if we pass away we can say that we tried our best to be good human beings respecting the teachings of the Quran. And O Allah, please may you hasten the appearance of our dear 12th Imam, Imam Muhammad al-Mahdi. Ajallahu faraja. Sut al-Fatiha, please. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein.
Ya Fatima Zahra, 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 Ya Fatima Zahra. उम्मत ने बहुत आपको तड़पाया है बीबी, हर हक के लिए आपको तरसाया है बीबी। गासिब ने जो दरबार में बुलवाया है बीबी, इस दुख से लरज़ने लगा खुद अर्श खुदा का। या फातिमा ज़हरा, शबीर की दुनिया में विलादत से भी पहले कहती थी ये ज़हरा के बहुत سہتی ہوں صدمے، بچہ یہ میرا کوکھ میں بے چین بہت ہے، بچہ میرا کہتا ہے کہ اماں میں ہوں پیاسا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا۔ ماں کھانا کھلاتی ہے تو پھر کھاتے ہیں بچے، جاتی ہے جہاں ماں وہیں آ جاتے ہیں بچے، بن ماں کے کہیں چین نہیں پاتے ہیں بچے، کام آتا ہے بچوں کے بہت ماں کا سہارا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا، یا فاطمہ زہرا۔ دنیا سے چلی کہتی ہوئی بنت پیمبر، غم کرب و بلا کا ہے لیے یہ دل مضطر، آتا ہے تصور میں میرے شام کا منظر، اللہ رکھے زینب و کلثوم کا پردہ، یا فاطمہ زہرا، 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 یا حسین،
یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، یا حسین، اللہم صلی علی محمد و آل محمد. This مخصوصی زیارت for Lady Zahra. Salam Allah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. حضور سيدتي ومولاتي ومعتمدي ورجائي وذخري وذخيرتي في دنياي وآخرتي، مولاتي فاطمة الزهراء عليها الصلاة والتسليم، أصالة عن نفسي ونيابة عن والدي ووالدي والدي وعن إخواني وأخواتي وعن جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات، بالخصوص من قلدني الزيارة والدعاء قربة إلى الله تعالى. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا ممتحنة، امتحنك الله الذي خلقك قبل أن يخلقك فوجدك لما امتحنك صابرة، وزعمنا أن لك أولياء ومصدقون وصابرون لكل ما أتانا به أبوك صلى الله عليه وآله وأتى به وصيه، فإنا نسألك إن كنا صدقناك إلا ألحقتنا بتصديقنا لهما، لنبشر أنفسنا بأننا قد طهرنا بولايتك. السلام عليك يا بنت رسول الله، السلام عليك يا بنت نبي الله، السلام عليك يا بنت حبيب الله، السلام عليك يا بنت خليل الله، السلام عليك يا بنت صفي الله، السلام عليك يا بنت أمين الله، السلام عليك يا بنت خير خلق الله، السلام عليك يا بنت أفضل أنبياء الله ورسله وملائكته، السلام عليك يا بنت خير البرية، السلام عليك يا سيدة نساء العالمين من الأولين والآخرين، السلام عليك يا زوجة ولي الله وخير الخلق بعد رسول الله، السلام عليك يا أم الحسن والحسين سيدي شباب أهل الجنة، السلام عليك أيتها الصديقة الشهيدة، السلام عليك أيتها الرضية المرضية، السلام عليك أيتها الفاضلة الزكية. السلام عليك أيتها الحوراء الإنسية. السلام عليك أيتها التقية النقية. السلام عليك أيتها المحدثة العليمة. السلام عليك أيتها المظلومة المغصوبة. السلام عليك أيتها المضطهدة المقهورة. السلام عليك يا فاطمة بنت رسول الله ورحمة الله وبركاته. صلى الله عليك وعلى روحك وبدنك. أشهد أنك مضيت على بينة من ربك، وأن من سرك فقد سر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن جفاك فقد جفا رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن آذاك فقد آذى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن وصلك فقد وصل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، ومن قطعك فقد قطع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله، لأنك بضعة منه وروحه التي بين جنبيه. أشهد الله ورسله وملائكته أني راض عمن رضيت عنه، ساخط على من سخطت عليه، متبرئ ممن تبرأت منه، موال لمن واليت، معاد لمن عاديت، مبغض لمن أبغضت، محب لمن أحببت، وكفى بالله شهيدا وحسيبا وجازيا ومثيبا. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم كل وليك الحجة ابن الحسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا، حتى تسكنه أرضك طوعا وتمتعه فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد.
Can I just request you all just to be seated for a few moments, please? Jazakallah. Thank you so much. Today is also the Barsi Majlis for the mother of our Raza here. So please recite Surah Fatiha for his mother. And also a reminder that this is a two-part lecture, and the continuation of part 2 will be tomorrow at 7 p.m. at the Ahlul Bayt Islamic Center, Hanover Square. Yeah, so inshallah, if you want to see how to sort of navigate through the issues that Sheikh has raised, then it's best you be there tomorrow for that. But very, very enlightening lecture, Sheikh. I don't know. We'll find that normally, when we go back from a majlis, especially with Nazir, we normally ask him, okay, what 3 things have you learnt from today's majlis? I'm not going to ask him that question today, just in case if he hasn't understood your lecture fully. But no, it was an important topic, and a topic I think it sort of provides us with what's written in our history, and also the lens, and it gives us an explanation that if someone raises these questions with us, we know how to sort of answer those questions. So so for that, thank you so much for that. Today also, Sheikh has brought a book. Now, I'm cognizant that there's not many Khojas in this room, but Sheikh's father, Dr. Sibten Panjwani, a social worker, community worker, who has served our community in various capacities, has written a book, The Khoja Shia Ishnashri of East Africa, and it dates back to 1860 to 1960, so it's 100 here history. And that's very important for people who come from East African origins. I remember I was in a meeting with some city council leaders, and there was a Jewish community, there was ourselves, and there was various other religious communities. And I think he was the chief executive lead city council. Just to break the ice, he asked each of us to give us a bit of a history about ourselves and about our community. And when he came to me, I was actually quite struggling to answer him. But again, you know, someone for me, even if you ask me where did the Khoja sort of came from, I think Brother Tariq gave me that sort of explanation, you know, and he's not being a Khoja himself. So it just shows that how important it is. But what I'll do is I'll ask Sheikh, because Sheikh is the one who edited this book, so to come and just give a few details. And this book is available, it's £15. So anyone who wants to buy this copy book, then they can approach myself. Sheikh.
Muhammad wa ali Muhammad salawat. Assalamu alaikum. I don't want to take too much time because you've heard me, so you're bored of my voice. But just 2 minutes only. As Rasul Bhai said, yes, it's a book that my dear father wrote, which I was the editor of, the Khoja Shia Ithnashiris of East Africa. What's the book about? Why perhaps may you be interested in it? The book is about the migration and identity and challenges of a people known as the Khoja Shia Ithnashiris who migrated from India to East Africa. So whether one is Khoja, non-Khoja, if you like history, the book itself is very interesting. I'll give you one small example. In 1839, there was a person called Al-Haj Sachupira. Sachupira went with his parents from India to East Africa on a dhow. That's kind of small kind of boat, right? Why? There was a famine in India, there was economic struggles, so it was a search for a new land, search for hope. When they went on the dhow, his parents drowned. He was only 3 years old. 3 years old. Parents drowned, okay? But he managed to reach Kilwa, okay? He managed in East Africa. And he was taken care of by his uncle, right? So that migration, which at that time didn't mean anything, led to the early settlements of what is now known today as the Khoja Shia Ithnashir community, right? So for me, yes, as a Khoja, but as somebody that wants to know my identity, and that's why I said, if you all wish to know your identity or the meaning of history, the themes of this book are very, very inspiring. Just how did a community become Islamic? How did they organize? What were the challenges? What were the struggles? So for that reason, if you are interested, inshallah, as Rasul Bhai said, the book is available, and inshallah, you know, may Allah bless all work for the Almighty. Thank you, inshallah. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheikh. Salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Inshallah, tabarruk will be served outside.